Let's see. Here we are. Christopher, welcome back.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Part two, part Dukes here. The last time we got close to the end, I thought it got pretty interesting. You've definitely got a story to tell that definitely is worth probably more than one conversation. Today I wanted to dive into some of those things if possible.
Sure.
There's a lot of interesting things about you to be explored. And I want to veer back from the beginning a little bit outside of the questions that I've asked before. The first question that I have for you is I want you to elaborate a little bit more off your childhood. What was your childhood like growing up?
Well, my childhood growing up was, typical of, most kids growing up during that age. I'm an older Gen X, and, we were always out doing stuff. Our parents half the time didn't know where we were, but we were somewhere in the
Right.
neighborhood. We're not monitored like how kids are in the last 30 years. It was definitely different back then. We could be gone, and we come back in for dinner or come back when the sun went down. But nonetheless, I would say my childhood was ordinary for those times. I would say though that during that time, I really wasn't really didn't know who I was. And even at a young age, I always felt like I knew what I was good at. I knew
Mhm.
what I wasn't good at, but for somehow I just coming from my own perspective, I felt like I never fit in, even though I did, and I technically did with certain groups of kids growing up. I just for some reason didn't feel personally deep inside that I did, and I think that's where my validation, my strong need for validation came from, and it was because, as I mentioned earlier in the
Mhm.
first show, I didn't get that from my father growing up, and so while I was throwing a great game as a pitcher, and I'm looking into the stands to see who was there, and my mother was there, but my dad wasn't. So it
Mhm.
was, even though at the time I didn't think it was that big of a deal, it was. And I just realized that I just always felt like I wasn't good enough, or I just didn't, I didn't fit in like I thought I should, even though maybe other people didn't see it that way. It was just coming from me. So that was kind of like that feeling growing up as a kid.
Yeah, I heard something on the internet called like TikTok philosophies or TikTok research, where they say that sometimes the greatest manifestations of an individual and their success is from the weak areas from significant weak areas of their life, like significant insecurities, as a characteristic of something that could possibly make somebody great. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think as kids, we're always looking for, kids want to fit in. I mean, especially even more today because, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's always been cliques, right? And that's even gotten more profound over the last 30 years with, parents. They get in little cliques with their kids, and their kids can do no wrong. And back in my day, if we did something wrong, it wasn't out of line for a neighbor to come over and give us a good whooping. And your parents would support it. It wouldn't be like, Don't touch my child. How dare you?
Right.
I'm gonna call the police." It was like that was but now, that that's not the case. And
Mhm.
it was completely different times for me. I mean, I'm 58 years old. But no, I do agree. I just think that, kids now more or less today, just because of the technology and the lack of face-to-face communication, just, it's harder to fit in these days, especially with all, everything out these days. People, just dealing with their, not only with their identities as a person, who they are, but you got, kids that are becoming teenagers, and they could be dealing with their sexual identities, and and amongst other things. So, I think it's more complex based upon the technology and all the information and how we have access to things that I didn't have when I was growing up. And
Yeah.
I think that was a good thing, by the way. I'm not saying that was a bad thing. It was actually a good thing, but nonetheless, we are a product of our times and the environment we grow up in.
Yeah. Um, I um I want to zoom in and and veer a little bit into curiosity about your father again. Um, just for review or reflection, describe your relationship with your father again.
Well, at the time, I mean, I didn't really have a strong relationship with my father. Towards the end, we sort of did before he died at the age of 56 of cancer. It was just my father just didn't know how to be a father. Like he was the provider.
Mm,
He would, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have had my dirt bike and I wouldn't have been racing motocross had my father not bought me that motorcycle when I was a young kid. So my dad was a provider. It was just that he wasn't really there emotionally. That connection that a dad has with his kids, it just wasn't there. The communication wasn't there. What I learned in hindsight was he didn't know how to be a dad. He didn't understand what he should be do. He didn't understand what to say, and I didn't realize that. I just thought at the time growing up he just wasn't interested, or he had other better things to do than be around myself and my brother and so on.
yeah. You said in times past, my father was the root of my anger. What what did that mean for you emotionally?
I mean, I think it was the fact that, I was always looking for that validation. I wanted to feel like I belonged. I want to feel like I accomplished things and it was recognized. And I just feel like I never got that growing up. Even though I would do well in a baseball game, or I'd have my moments, I just never felt I never felt that validation. And it was always, I guess, I was looking at from him, even though I didn't know that again consciously at the time. I just felt like there was always that void. And a lot of times my father would promise things
Mhm.
only in the final moments of whenever, let's say if I was, so I'll give you an example. Like when I was 18 years old and I was going to college, and he was going to give me a car to drive to college. And I went to Arizona State and I lived in Connecticut. So that's a far drive, right?
Right.
And in the final, the day, I think it was a day or two before I left, he didn't follow through. You're not taking the car. So it
Mm,
was kind of like, again, a letdown,
yeah.
and so now he eventually did, but not that first year. It didn't happen until the second year that I got the car, and then it was more of a hand me down because he didn't need that car anymore. So it was now I take it over. So yeah.
Um, uh, yeah, there's this notion that I hear from the narrative of not being a priority to your father, maybe accidentally, kind of, maybe not intentionally,
Yep.
but not being a priority. You talk about hand me down, being, you know, uh, it reminds me of my own personal childhood experience to a degree, but I'll leave that out there for right now. I can relate to it. I can relate to it with regards to not feeling, not being zoomed in on, not being seen as a priority, kind of ish. There's
Yeah.
another word I'm thinking of, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. That experience of getting sort of the crumbs from the table rather than like the bread. That's the thing that came in my head is the
Yeah.
crumbs from the table, kind of ish. W-
Yes.
How would you? Is there another word you could think of off the top of your head that describes that experience or that feeling when you don't get that necessary attention from
Yeah, I
friends?
mean, you feel you're an afterthought. That's how
Yeah.
I felt. I was an afterthought, and and in growing up, I kind of felt that way a lot with a lot of situations. I was always the black sheep on my baseball team,
Mhm.
and again, I was an afterthought there, even though I was a good player.
Mhm.
I kind of like I felt like the coach was harder on me than say some other kids, which
Yeah.
is in hindsight now is fine. A matter of fact, I like that, but at the time I didn't understand it. I just felt like I was kind of isolated and not that I was looking for special treatment. That's not like again, I'm not. That's why I'm not bringing it up. I just always felt like I at the time growing up, I was an afterthought when it came to my father and, certain, I guess, individuals that kind of mirrored, the same
Behavior.
behavior as my
Yeah.
father. Correct. And I had coaches like that and so on. So,
Yeah. When you don't get that feeling from the right source, it tends to dysfunctionally connect to other areas of your life. Kind of. You know what I mean? I can
correct.
easily see that happening. Is dad is not doing it, and then when you see other people that are superimposing themselves on you, you almost take it like your relationship with your father.
Exactly.
Um, when did you realize that your struggles, or when did you realize that this that a lot of this energy that you were feeling came from your relationship with your father? Kind of.
I guess I kind of didn't really realize it fully until kind of like my 20s and at that point, I've gone through some trials and tribulations in high school, college,
Mhm.
and I just realized that, again, I didn't have that connection with my father that I guess I had always wanted. And even though I didn't really know it earlier, I kind of did. Now when my father was I was approaching about 30 years old at the time, and I can remember my father, when he came to see me when I had my back operation. I had a back operation back in 1994,
Mhm.
and I was in and out of the hospital for about 6 months at Sloan Kettering in Manhattan,
Mhm.
and my dad, was busy at work. He always put work ahead of everything else. Work always came before family. That was the most important thing. He had a
Mhm.
very strong work ethic and as a result of it, my dad made the effort to come see me. And that was the first time like I felt like he was trying,
Mhm.
like making up for that time that he missed myself and my brother was growing up. But yet I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know, was he doing that because he felt guilty? So
Mhm.
I had mixed feelings about it. I mean, I was very cordial. I accepted it, but I didn't really put two and two together. Like I was still a little bitter
Yeah.
about it, but I felt, a lot better that he was making the attempt. It really didn't. I didn't really understand until I had that epiphany that I talked about in the first session we talked, and where he just didn't know how to, and that revelation didn't come to me until that time I had when he was dying the day before he died.
Yeah, that takes such a strong level of maturity, and I don't know what you want to call it, but that's a hard thing for a lot of children, a lot of adults to come to grips with
Mm,
as it relates to dealing with parents sometimes.
yes,
That they did the best they could. If they knew better, they would do better.
correct.
Kind of, you know. Um, um, you talk, at one point in the interview last time, I questioned whether there was connection between your relationship with your father and I believe there was a divorce in your family system. Did your father was divorced, correct?
Yes, yes.
I wonder whether there was a connection passed down passed down behaviors even as it relates to yourself. You know, when you identified that you were divorced.
Oh, yeah. I
Um,
mean, yeah. My
uh,
parents, they never got along, and all of those impacted my relationships early in my life. I didn't have healthy, uh, relationships with girlfriends, and eventually I had a fiance that it didn't work out, and I was not faithful, and because again, my father wasn't faithful either. So I mean, in a way, I was becoming like him in a way without even knowing it.
right, subconsciously, I would say that's a subconscious mechanism of
Yes.
of normalization of behavior, and then it being implemented because it's normalized.
Yeah.
Um, um, I had another question before this. I had one specific question before I'm going to ask the next one here, and that is, I think, um, fudge, I lost
That's
train of thought.
okay. It'll come to you.
It'll come to me, you know. But it's related to this next question, which is, you know, divorce can be a wake up call. How did that season impact your self understanding?
Well, I mean, it did impact. I mean, again, I didn't realize it. It was just, I didn't trust people. My early relationships were very unstable, very unhealthy. And, I never really trusted
Hmm.
certain people. So I just felt like that was all I knew. I mean, even though I was seeking a healthy and trustful relationship, I didn't know. At the same token, I didn't feel like I deserved that. So it was easy to navigate towards those healthy on those relationships because that's all I knew.
Hmm. What do you think caused what do you think this was the question? What do you you know, I always believe that there's a generational curse that ends up happening when we do not learn the lessons from the previous generation.
Yep.
What do you think was the turning what do you think caused you to break that generational curse to have a better relationship?
Well, with me, when I had that life changing moment with my father before he died, when he said that, I did the best I could with what I knew. And, that finally sunk in like, oh my God, he's just a product of his own upbringing and environment. And he's just repeating the same patterns
Yeah.
that's all he knew. And that was all I knew up to that point. And then I guess it was for the first time in my life. And again, I've committed myself in my business, even as an executive coach and helping people. If you're truly going to have a healthy, if you're looking to really get whole with yourself and really develop healthy, productive, sustainable relationships, whether if that is with a spouse, partner, a business relationship, a leader to a subordinate, whatever that may look like, the first relationship that you got to develop and work on every day. And when I mean every day, and that's something I've been doing for over 26 years, is that relationship with you. I got to every day nurture myself. I have to love myself. I got to know what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. I'm not here to constantly validate myself. I just have to make sure that I'm doing the things that where I show up to be my best, not to be the best, but to be my best. To know what when I if I drop the ball, to be accountable and admit it. Because
Hmm.
if I could truly love myself unconditionally, then I'm going to be better as an example and a resource to help somebody do for themselves. That's an interdependent relationship. And that is what, kind of steered me down that path back during that time. And then I never looked back. So I don't get involved in codependent relationships, and I work with individuals in teams and helping them to recognize that. And it always has to start with you. You have to develop that relationship with you before you start developing healthier relationships with others.
You mentioned in previous interview that you were diagnosed with ADHD or you had ADHD. How has understanding that helped shape your recovery journey, and how does it help manage your life today?
Well, I mean, I have a very self-disciplined life. I'm very consistent with daily habits and processes, and it all is designed to help me keep, allow myself to be present, to make decisions, take calculated risks in the moment, to be aware of my communication, both with body language, tone of voice, the words I say, understanding different personality types, generational types, culture and ethnic types, and how I communicate, knowing that I can, and the more I can do that with myself, taking care of myself first. It's like the oxygen mask. I got it when it comes to, I got to put it on myself before I can be a better resource and example for other people. So I got to remind myself and do that every day. And that to me is the secret to successful relationships. You got to be able to love yourself. You have to develop that relationship with yourself, not with other, not that you have to like look for the right person that's going to make you whole. That's in movie, that's in romance novels and Hollywood movies. It does not exist. And they always say in the AA program that when you are, in the process of getting sober, and not sober just from the drink, but sober up here,
Mhm.
you don't want to be getting involved in another relationship. That the only relationship you should be involved in is with yourself
Mhm.
first before you start bringing in somebody else into the mix.
Give me some practical applications of how you manage your ADD, ADHD.
So one of the things that I do every day is I wake up at a certain time. That consistency helps me to be focused. I make my bed. I meditate for 15, 20 minutes. I journal, taking the head trash out. I do resistance training. I do cardio by walking 3 miles daily. I then come back. I do Tai Chi, and then I take a cold shower, then a warm shower, eat, and then I read a chapter or two out of a book, and then go over my daily goals, and then I start my day. I do that all in a 2 hour window, and by the time I'm done, I am like focused. So that's what's helped me to offset the symptoms of my racing thoughts in my mind over the last 26 years. I don't take any medication. I don't need any other kind of, you know, certain types of music or certain types of things to keep me it's all through that routine. And everyone's different. So I'm not saying that, what I just shared is going to be the answer for everyone, and,
Oh,
and that you shouldn't be on medication. I'm not here to advocate that. But
right.
with that being said, those are the things that have helped me to offset the negative effects of ADHD on me, both on a personal and professional level.
Yeah, when you were doing when you described what you were doing, I thought you were at the end of your day, and then you told me no. Then my day starts. I was like,
Oh
oh my
no, no,
goodness.
no, no. I'm up at like 3:45 in the morning. So by before 6 o'clock, I'm ready to go if I have to.
Yeah, I love it. I've got ADD, so I've learned that having a strong routine, having a strong schedule, and then perfecting that schedule over time helps compensate for the tendency to want to be distracted or tendency to not to veer off towards your goals. Almost to the point where my philosophy is whatever you do daily, whatever you're trying to do, convert it into a daily goal. It's always been beneficial for me across the board, and in that way, I'm not too deviated because I'm trying to master my daily self. It's
Yeah,
really just one day at a time. So I can relate to that very much. So you know, very it is a difficult chore to discipline. It is a difficult process to train yourself to be disciplined like that in order to
yeah,
compensate for that piece there. But such is
correct.
the balance of life. Like
Yes,
you don't get any shortcuts. You pick your pain, as I said.
exactly.
So very good. Um I want to I want to veer into some some of my latter questions, and going back to your relation with your father, which is really the pinnacle of my curiosity. I think it is the center of a man is his relationship with his father. I don't know. I just think that I think that you know that impact the impact that a father has on his son is immeasurable.
It is very immeasurable. I'm a CEO and co-founder of a nonprofit called Empowered Fathers in Action. I'm not
Yeah.
involved in the day to day due to my commitments in my for-profit business, but we have people who run the movement,
Mhm.
and the father's role is instrumental for a child's development, especially for a son, even a daughter as well. A lot of times, the father's role is undermined, meaning that, hey,
Mhm.
dads are here to be providers. We put food on the table, we pay for things, and that's it. Mom handles everything else. Well, that sounds good, but in reality, that's not the case. A lot of kids who have self-esteem issues, which
Mhm.
I had growing up, could all be tied back to a lack of father-son, father-daughter connection.
Mhm.
And there's studies that show that and prove that.
Yeah.
And those fathers that have strong relationships with their children, is it perfect? And no, it never will be. But when they do, usually those children that grow into teenagers and then adults have higher levels of self-esteem and confidence, and more likely are able to navigate difficult moments sooner than later. So it's a good thing to catch. And I fortunately was able to do that before I had kids, and break the curse or break the pattern, so to speak, that I had to go through, and my father had to go through, and perhaps his dad had to go through, and whatever happened before that.
Right. If your father was still sitting here right now, what do you think you would say to him?
I would tell my father that I love him, and that he gave me the greatest gift I could ever imagine. And in that moment that we had before he passed away, it was like he made up for all those years, because sometimes we are born into situations we didn't ask for. Our soul didn't, well, maybe consciously we didn't ask for it. Maybe our soul did, because it was a way of learning, again, if you really want to get deep. But nonetheless, I'm thankful and grateful for the life I had growing up now. When I look back, even though it wasn't easy, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be the man I am today. I wouldn't be as strong emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, socially, occupationally, all the 8 pillars of wellness in alignment, that harmony, had I not gone through that, and had I not had that experience with my father. So I would just again tell him that thank you for that gift. And I look forward to seeing you again you know, when I pass from this life to the next realm.
Yeah. What message would you share with someone watching this who feels trapped in addiction or anger?
I would say that if you now are dealing with, unresolved anger, you're dealing with an addiction, there's always a root cause to it. And oftentimes it's not at the surface level, it's at a deeper level. And more or less 9 out of 10 times it could be traced back to a disconnect with one of your parents or both parents. Oftentimes it can be, could be a mother issue with a son,
Mhm.
it could be a father issue, it could be a daughter issue with their with her father. That's why oftentimes girls that grow up to be promiscuous, or get involved in things that they shouldn't. It's because of daddy issues, right? We've heard that. And so all of these things can be tied back to that. So as I meant, if we're going to heal from the inside out, which is the only way, there's no magic pill. You got to get to the root cause of it. You got to be able to address that pain. You have to face it and understand that a lot of times it wasn't intentional. Your parent was
Mhm.
just, again, doing what they knew. It didn't come across well, maybe it was harmful, but that's all they knew. It's not here to justify what they did. It's just that, again, they didn't know better. And again, it's not about you in that case. You got to take the good with the bad, and now as an adult, be responsible. How can I turn this negative experience into something positive. And that's what I did 26 years ago and never looked back.
Um, um, what my final question for you is what's next for you? What purpose are you walking in right now?
That purpose is always the same. It's to consistently, how can I, be better than I was yesterday? Not the best, never striving to be the best. I'm always striving to be better. And how can I now be better to be a better example and a resource for others to do the same? How can I do that to help my son become a better man as he grows up, to be eventually a father and a husband and so on? For my wife and helping her now to be a better wife, a mother, and so on, and then anybody around me. It's my duty that I got to show up every day to do that. That I feel that that is the greatest gift that you can give another human being is your
Mhm.
consistent, your daily and consistent example and resourcefulness to help them do for themselves. That's my commitment, my mission, my why, my purpose, all wrapped into one.
Amen to that. How can people reach out to you?
Well, the best place you can reach me, we can connect on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is always a great place. I'm there a lot of times. I'm not. I mean, I'm on other social media. Don't get me wrong, and I have a big presence on other platforms. Yet LinkedIn is a great resource. My website's ChristopherSalem.com, which is more of my EQ and communication side of my business. There, I'm
Mhm.
also have my for-profit business, SustainableSuccess.net. You could also find us there. And of course, our nonprofit 501c3 organization, Empowered Fathers in Action at EFAmovement.org. You can find us there. And if you'd like to connect by email, Chris, CHRIS, at Christopher Salem, like Salem, Massachusetts.com.
Christopher, thank you for being real and transparent with us today. I mean, appreciate your authenticity. You definitely have a story to tell, and that story should be repeated. It definitely is an empowering story. It definitely encourages individuals to take what they have in front of them and to try to make themselves better every single day. That's the message that I hear coming from you. And it's definitely something that encourages me as we sharpen one another, on our journey here. So appreciate
Thank
your time.
Appreciate it. And thank you for all you do, having this platform to share this and inspire others to do for themselves.
Yeah, we hope so. All right. You have a great day. Talk to you, brother.
Take care.
Bye now.